Okay, welcome to the Kindergarten Access for ELLs video, just to give you an insight into how to navigate the online training. And also, we're going to take a look at the test administrator's manual. So I've already logged in to the WIDA secure portal, and I've found the Kindergarten Access for ELLs, administration and scoring. Once you log in, this is what it will look like. You will see the home page, which is where I am right now. You also see the module, so I click into that. He gives you an overview of the kindergarten, access for ELLs. It gives you information about the materials, listening, speaking, the writing, and the reading parts, and how to complete and score it. Now, you will be scoring the kindergarten access based on the kindergarten speaking and writing rubrics. And then you take the certification quiz. And the kindergarten certification quiz is, in my opinion, a little bit more difficult than the grades 1-12 access for ELLs online. But everything that you need is in the online training course and also in your test administrator manual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to a couple parts of this training that historically would have happened later, but I think will give you more insight if this is the first time that you have ever administered the kindergarten access for ELLs. Okay, so what you see in this visual is basically a roadmap, a very simple roadmap that helps you understand the composition of the kindergarten access for ELLs. So there are 6 parts. Part A, B, C, D, E, and F. So 6 different parts. The first part is the listening and speaking, because the listening and speaking are given together. Then you have the writing assessment, and then the reading assessment. And then you have another listening and speaking part, another writing part, another reading part. So there are 6 parts to the entire kindergarten assessment. And remember, the listening and speaking are given simultaneously. I'm sharing this information with you on the front end because it will make everything that you see in the TAM I think much easier to navigate. So these are different items. So there's item A1, item A2, item A3, and so on. And the items are really questions. So question A1, question A2, and so on. So you do part A, you do these questions to the point where the child reaches their ceiling, and we're going to talk a little bit about the ceiling later on in the training. Then you go to part B, which is the writing part. Based on how the child responds here, that's going to inform you where you start in part E. Okay? And then you have part C, and again, that's the reading part. So you've got item C1, C2, C3, and so on. And then you do part D, part E, and part F with those items. Now, what does the 1 mean, David? What does the 2? Well, it means item 1, 2, and 3, but it also means what type of language, what level of language you want to hear for that particular item. So for item A1, you want to hear level 1 speaking based on the kindergarten speaking rubric. For item A2, you want to hear level 2 speaking based on the kindergarten speaking rubric. So each one of those numbers, it indicates the item number, but it also indicates the level of language you want to hear. So you want to hear level 1 language here, level 2, level 3, and so on. And this will make more sense once we take a look at those rubrics later on in the training. But I want to share that with you on the front end because having done this before, I find that this can be a very useful visual to help people understand the composition of the assessment. But historically, it hasn't happened until later in the training, so I wanted to move that up a little earlier this year. Okay, what I showed you before was kind of the blueprint, the overall view of the access for ELLs for kindergarten. But what you're looking at now is the student response booklet. Every kindergarten student will have a student response booklet. The student is responding and you are recording the answers in this booklet. So if you remember on the previous chart that I shared with you, you have Part A, Part B, Part C, and so on. So each of those parts had items, item A1, A2, A3, and so on. So this is what the listening slash speaking student response booklet looks like. Now remember, for item A1, you are looking and listening for language that aligns with level 1 expectations. So I want to share this with you on the front end, just to give you a little more insight into how to score the assessment. It will make a lot more sense as we get further on into the video. However, I find that if I share this in the front end, it may confuse you a little bit right now, but it will make what I share later a lot clearer to you. So when you administer the listening and speaking part A to a kindergarten student, you're going to provide a prompt to them. They have to listen and provide a correct response. So for example, in this first item, the first question, you're listening for the word, or you need the child to identify the picture or the item of a teacher. If they do that correctly, you would bubble in correct. The same for the next one, flag. If they do that correctly, respond correctly. If they listen and respond correctly, you bubble in correct. And then scissors for the third. If they listen and respond correctly, you bubble in correct. If they're not responding correctly, you would bubble in incorrect. So that's fairly straightforward for how you score the listening part of the listening and speaking part A. Remember, listening and speaking are administered together, even though they're separate domains, which is a little different than what you see in the online version for grades 1 through 12. Now, the speaking part, the way this works is you provide the child with a prompt, and you're trying to elicit speech from them. We want to give them the benefit of the doubt, every opportunity to speak, but you're trying to elicit speech from them. And a level 1 student, for level 1 language, you're really listening for words, single words, perhaps 2 words. If they are able to produce that level of language, then you would bubble in meets. Okay? If they are not able to produce that level of language, if you need the child to produce a 1-word response and perhaps they're not able to respond at all, then you would bubble in approaches. Now, if the child produces a response that's garbled a little bit, you're not quite certain, and you've prompted them and you're still not quite certain if they meet or approaches, you would bubble in the question mark or check the question mark. And so what that question mark means is you go on to the next part of the assessment, you administer the listening, and then you administer the speaking. If the child is able to meet the speaking expectations on this item, then you can assume that they would also meet the expectations in this item. So you would erase the question mark check, and then you would move this to meets. So remember, you're only using the question mark if you're not quite certain if the child meets that expectation. Then you go to the next item, administer it. If the child meets that expectation, then you assume they would have met it for the lower level item, and then you erase this and move that to meets. So that's how you score listening and speaking. The reading and writing are very similar, but I wanted to show you the answer sheet on the front end because I think it will help you as we go further into the video. And then these are the criteria for stopping. So you would stop here if the child only got 1 correct on the listening part, and if the child did not meet the expectation for a level 1 speaking response. And I'll show you that rubric later on in the video. But I wanted to show you what this looks like on the front end because I think it'll help you out later on as we go forward. And then once a child meets their ceiling, they're not able to go any further based on this criteria, then you would simply check stopped here, and then you would go to the next part of the assessment. Okay, we're back in the test administrator manual, and I'm going to scroll down to the kindergarten section, which is part 2, section 4, and if I click here, it should take me to that section. Yes, it did. The wonders of technology. Before I jump into this, I want to show you where the rubric is in the Test Administrator's Manual, because the rubric is what we use to score the kindergarten access for ELLs. So we're going to take a look at that rubric. And through the magic of technology, I am now on page 88 of your Test Administrator's Manual. So I will give you a moment to get there, page 88. And this is what the speaking rubric looks like. So if you remember item A1, item A2, item A3. So item A1, you're listening for this type of language, okay? Single words, very frequently used vocabulary. They are using language that they're very familiar with. And you can see how that rubric develops from level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, and so on. Once you get to level 3, you're really looking for simple and expanded sentences. The students have a little more complexity in the language that they're using. They're using language that's a little more specific to content areas, perhaps. You want to remember, though, that these are kindergarten students. And unless you're very well versed on the kindergarten curriculum, you just have to use your best judgment. And you're really looking for both the quantity and the quality of the language that the students are using. But I wanted you to understand that this speaking rubric aligns to the different items. So item A1, you're listening for this. Item A2, you're listening for this. Item A3, you're listening for this. So that's where those numbers come into play. So I'm going to scroll down, and you can say the same thing for the writing part of the assessment. So when you've got item item C1, C2, and so on, the writing parts of the Access for ELL, the kindergarten Access for ELLs, when you're looking at item, number 1, and they've reversed this rubric just to confuse you a little bit. But when you're looking at item 1, you're looking for students at that level, a child that can produce a writing attempt of at least 2 letters. They may show some ability to write their own name, copy the letters. They may not form those letters well, but you can clearly see that the child at level 1, writing level 1, is able to make an attempt at letter formation. And you can recognize that. And you can see how level 2, you're looking for writing at this description. Level 3 at this description. So when you're looking at the speaking items and the writing items, they match up. What you're looking for, the expectation, is built into these rubrics. So I wanted to point out both the speaking rubric to you and the writing rubric to you, and these are available in the back of your Test Administrator's Manual. And as you scroll down, you will see examples, scoring examples, and this will help you when you go through the online training, of partial words, different examples of what a word may look like. So this is an interesting example. You've got a child, they tell you that the word that they have composed is office. And you can see they've phonetically done that, office, so that's pretty good for a kindergartner. But that is clearly that child trying to and being successful at producing a word at the kindergarten level. What a phrase would look like: bunny pretty, bunny pretty. So you can see how the child was able to compose that. One day David lost his backpack. That actually happens quite a bit to me. But one day David lost his backpack. So you can see that. There's an O there. Day, you can see the D and the Y. They are struggling a little bit with the vowel. David, so they got the consonants there. They reversed the I, but that's okay because it's recognizable. Lost, laws, clearly. His, so they've got the voiced consonant Z in place of the unvoiced consonant or phoneme S. And then they've got backpack, so they've made an attempt at writing backpack, and you can recognize that is backpack. So this is a sentence. Even though it's invented spelling, it's still a sentence. So these are scoring examples. Once you get into the writing part